Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I'm here today with Pat Benincasa, and we're going to talk about her family and her roots. So, welcome, Pat. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bob. I'm delighted to be here. All
That's
things Italian.
absolutely yes, indeed, yes, indeed. Um, and so, where are you located?
Well, I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, but most of my family, when they came to this country, migrated around the Detroit area in Michigan.
Oh, okay. So you're the first Italian from Michigan so far. So I've had Illinois, and I've had Ohio, and I've had Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
this should be fun. This should be good. So my first question to you is, when and why did you start researching the family?
I think, like most of us Italians, we grow up with all these stories. Uncle so and so, Grandpa did this, but we get to a certain age and we begin to want to know more. And for me, it started with my cousin, Helen Selfie Gorday, gave me a book of burned love poems written in the 1890s. And she said, Patty, take this. And it was a burned, so I translated the book of these Italian love poems. I thought, my family's from southern Italy, which is really, at that time, was highly illiterate. And here my grandfather's walking around with a book of poems, and it's burned. So I thought, I got to know more. And that's what's, well, you know how this goes when you start doing genealogy
Yeah.
research. It's like one thing leads to another, and you go all Hansel and Gretel, and you start following those breadcrumbs, and just worlds open up. And that's really how it started.
So where in Italy is the family from?
My family, almost all of them, Bob, are from a little village called Mangone, and it's about 10 miles south of Cosenza. So we are the hardheads, the Calabrese.
Well, I have a little Calabrese in me,
All right then.
so I understand. And my wife says I'm a hothead, so that I guess
You
that makes sense.
qualify.
Yeah, well, she's half Sicilian and half Puerto Rican, so I watch my
Wow.
step.
Yes, you do.
So now, do we all assume that they came because things weren't good there, but do you know why they came and why they went to Michigan?
Yes. Well, uh, my grandfather, the Benincasa side, they immigrated through Canada. And my mother's side emigrated through Ellis Island. And so when I tracked my grandfather's history, I could see he and his brother Antonio in 1904, they start coming over to Canada, to Vancouver. They followed where other people were. So if there were people in the village that had jobs there, that's where they would go. And I also thought, if they came over, they stayed. For some reason, I thought when people emigrated back then, they would just leave Italy and stay forever in their new country. And I'm finding out these people went back and forth a lot. So my grandfather went back and forth to Mangone and to Ontario, and he married my grandmother, Gaetana Mauro. And 2 months later, he and his brother went back to Canada. And my grandfather worked on the Welland Canal, and that was a huge project in Ontario. And when I did the research, I found that they hired many, many Italians. And there's this whole world of information, Bob, that was just opening up. Also, my grandfather had a prosthetic left hand, and I
Hmm.
wanted to know, how did he lose his left hand? Come to find out, he lost it at the Welland Canal. And then I
Wow.
find it's really interesting
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then I started doing the research how in Canada they were hiring all these Southern Italian immigrants. And often they wouldn't even record their name. They'd give them a number on the job site. And they gave them the most dangerous jobs, planting explosives, digging in areas that had no business for someone to even go in there. And many of them were maimed or lost their lives. But some of them, they didn't even know their names. So all of a sudden, this world opens up like what my grandfather went through. And in the meantime, my grandmother is holding the fort down, like many of those Italian women, when their men went off to the States or Argentina, wherever they went. they were there raising the family and taking care of everything.
So now, do you know, or do you think that he was recruited? Because one of the interviews I did just a few weeks ago, where they talked about the Padrone and in
Yes.
1870 and going over there and recruiting people and bringing them here, and they originally were supposed to go to Argentina, and then they just left them in New York City.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you know if he was recruited or?
From what I tracked down, I could not find a padrone. I could not find that. But instead, it was uh, people from Mangone, the guys that went ahead, said, "Hey, you got to come here. This
Hmm.
is that you can get paid for doing this work. It's great money. That kind of thing." So they didn't need a padrone. They just followed nephews or cousins to the work site. That's what I could see.
Yeah. But then he found his way to the United States. So how did they
Well,
come to the U.S.?
so my grandfather and my grandmother, eventually he had her come over to Canada, and they lived in Canada. And then my dad, uh, during World War II, he tried to join the armed services in the States. They wouldn't have him. He was Canadian and
Hmm.
an Italian surname. He got pissed, Bob. I can't say it any other way. So he went to Canada and he joined the first regiment of the Canadian paratroopers, the very first regiment. And so he served for a year and he broke his nose jumping out of airplanes. So after a year as a Canadian paratrooper, he came out and he married my mother and they were in the States. And then eventually in the 50s, they brought my grandparents from Canada into the United States, got them the papers. So now, they immigrated twice. They were Canadian citizens and then they became American citizens.
Yeah. So that what's interesting about that, two things. One is my grandparents. I believe that they had planned to go back, um,
Mm,
and the reason they came was my grandfather was in the Libyan War in 1911,
yep,
and 1914 rolled around. World War One starts, and my grandmother, according to the stories I heard, my grandmother said, "You're not going to war again. We're going to go to America."
mm,
Now her brother was here,
okay,
um,
okay.
and so I believe they were going to go back because they left my uncle, my oldest uncle, in Italy with his grandparents.
Hmm,
Well, they never went back. They started having their family here.
yep, yep.
When he wanted to come, finally, he was 18 and he had to go in the service in Italy.
Oh,
But it was before World War II. He was the oldest uncle, and he served in the army. Uh, he wound up getting married. He started having a family. World War II breaks
yep,
out now.
yep.
Uh, he didn't have to go in the service because by then I think he had at least three children.
Okay.
So he didn't have to go in the Italian army. Luckily for him.
Hmm.
But when he came, well, wanted to come in 1950, he couldn't because of the immigration laws.
That's right. They changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even though he had four brothers serve in World War II, all American citizens.
Yep.
Um, he couldn't come to the States. He had to go to
Ah,
Canada and spend 5 years in Toronto,
yep.
and then
Yep.
finally came, I think, in 54 or 55.
When we think about family, I try to put when I was doing genealogy, one of the things I tried not to do was look at them through modern eyes. So for my
Yeah.
grandmother, tilling the soil, raising three babies, I could have thought of her as being victimized, oh, the injustice of it all. But those women didn't think like that. They they just knew they were going to take care of the home. They were going to take care of their babies. They were waiting for their men to contact them, so they knew when to go over. And I try to put myself in that position. I mean, how scary it must have been. Uh, you know, they're going to a country that they don't speak the language, they don't know. And when she brought her children, her three children, on board this ship, she's down in steerage, and they're listening to all these different languages, all these people crowded together. I mean, I think about their courage a lot. Bob.
Well, yeah, and you think about it. They're from these little towns.
Yeah,
They've never been probably 2 miles from the town,
yeah,
and here they are. Like you said, 3 children. The husband says, "Come,"
yeah.
and they have to get the donkey or whatever to get to the next town, to get to the next, to finally get to Naples
Yep.
and get on. Like you said, get on a boat.
And go and
Yeah,
leave everything you know
yeah.
behind you. Sometimes when I get scared about making a change or doing something, I think about my ancestors a lot. I think a day doesn't pass, I don't feel them inside of me, really. And so sometimes I think, oh my God, you guys went through that and I'm whining about this. And it kind of helps me put it in perspective, you know?
I know my daughter's she's nurse in Texas. She's a travel nurse now, and my wife is constantly. She didn't call. Did she get to work? She didn't get to work. Don't worry about it. She's fine. She'll call you, or she'll. And she's the same way. If she calls us and we're out, or we don't answer. Where were you guys?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. And like you said, you think about these people. There was there wasn't even telephone to be able to
No,
contact them. Nothing.
no, nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I think about Mangone, I did go there. I had to go to the village where my parents were born. I'm a first generation American. So it was really, it felt incomplete. I just needed to know.
Mhm.
And I was in college at the time, a million years ago. So me and a friend backpacked for 5 weeks in Italy. I had just taken an 8-hour Italian immersive language class, and I took an intense Italian Renaissance class. Bob, that's all I needed, really. The language and art. I'm an artist, so of course,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. So I said to a friend, "You want to go backpacking through Italy?" And she said, "Yeah, let's do." You know how college kids are. So we backpacked for 5 weeks, and I mapped out the entire trip off to all the artworks, the paintings, the sculptures, the palazzos. I just studied everything. It was like a family reunion in and of itself, art-wise. But we take the train down to Mangone. So we're leaving these sophisticated cities on this train going way down south. And so we come to this village, it's like midday. And we have these backpacks. We're two Americana, right? So
Mhm.
we're walking on the street and all the doors are closed. And I'm thinking, Jesus, where is everybody? And this woman walks towards me and I gasp. I thought, boy, she looks just like my grandmother. I can't believe this. And so I walk up to her and I say in Italian, I'm the daughter of Idu Rizzuto and Francesco Benincasa. Bob, the doors fly open. People
Mhm.
are coming out. And next thing, a lot of this and a lot of, and the cheeks, the hugging. So then we have to go from house to house. So my friend Barb and I say, we go to these houses, and what do? They bring out stock, the brandy. Each house, they poured half glass of stock. Salute, salute. We go to the next house. Salute, salute. 5 houses down, across the street, 5 houses back. Now I'm 5'2". And that's a lot of salute, a lot of stock. So that was like the beginning of this incredible trip. And the villages were like that mud hut whitewash. And I stayed with my Zia Caterina, my grandmother's sister. And now we're American kids in our 20s. Now, what do you know at 20, really?
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm thinking we're going to stay at her house, and I'm thinking a kitchen full of, we go in and she has a brazier for heat. I mean, it's that basic. And
Mhm.
then she said, tomorrow we're going to go to the bakery. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, donuts and this and that. So we get up, we go to the bakery. It's a whitewash building with a big oven in the middle. That's the bakery. So it was extra. They brought out the best food, supersata, sausage, everything they owned. And it's very poor. They gave us the best of everything. And then I went to the house where my dad was born. And this 95-year-old man jumps up, fedora on his head. And he says, I'm Jimmy Benincasa. I speak 5 languages. I'm happy you're here. And he sits back down. You know, these people they had their own intelligence.
so
They were,
so did they know? Did they know about the family in Canada or the U.S.? I mean,
They did.
so they
They
knew.
did. They
Yeah,
knew. But somehow they separated. Like my parents were the
yeah.
youngest of each family. And Bob, quite frankly, they Americanized. They
Mm. Yeah.
Americanized as much as they could. So when I'd leave them and go to my relatives, going to them was like being back in the old country. We would sit under grape arbors, broken English, half Italian. It was really Italy. Then I go back home to my Americanized parents. And so it was really an interesting way because I always felt like an immigrant, honest to God. And I had to remind myself I'm an American. So as a little kid, I'd go to friends' houses, Americans, and they'd bring food to eat. And I think, whoa, these Americans are strange. And then I said, wait a minute, I'm an American, because we were steeped in that culture. We played
Yeah,
with our
yeah.
cousins. We were always with relatives,
Yeah,
right?
we used to go to the beach with eggplant parmesan sandwiches, and
Of course you
you
did.
you'd look over at the next blanket, and they'd be eating peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, what was that? I felt so bad. They were like food deprived. I felt really bad for well, anyway, so it was really interesting. And then I have to tell you, in May of 1993, I woke up, I got dressed, and I went down to the St. Paul courthouse and I changed my name back to Benincasa.
Hmm.
I woke up, it was like I was a woman possessed. I couldn't do any, I didn't even have breakfast. I just went straight down there. When I was done, I came back and I called my dad in Michigan. I said, Dad, you're not going to believe what I just did. And he very sotto voce said, you changed your name. Now, I had never discussed this with any human being. I just felt it on my heart.
Hmm.
But the
Wow.
guy knew. But he also gave me the confidence and the way they raised me to be financially okay that I had the choice to do that.
So what did they change their name to?
He changed it to Benning because he was at Fort Benning
Oh,
training with the Canadian paratroopers.
oh wow.
So,
Wow.
so they thought, huh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's funny.
Well, I think people did what they had to do,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
I mean, we're from New York, so there was no name changing. And our names didn't get changed even at Ellis Island, at Sorrentino
Wow.
and Nicoletti. So, that was kind of simple. Um, so so what? I mean, what kind of amazing? Did you find anything really amazing either through this or through your DNA or
Oh my God. Whoa, that's a whole conversation. Um, The first thing I want to say about the DNA, before I go to that, I remember I was, 21. When we stepped off the plane in Rome, the second I touched that earth, I felt a buzz. Now I'm 20,
Mm,
right? And I wasn't into anything about ancestry. Just where are we going to eat? What are we going to do? But when I touched that soil, I felt, I felt like I was home. And when I looked around, everybody looked like cousins, Bob.
yeah,
It was
I know the feeling.
amazing. So, yes, I've done the DNA. I did Ancestry, I did 23andMe, GEDmatch, and MyHeritage. And basically, I'm 96% Southern Italian and 4% from the Levant. So I'm a daughter of the
Yeah,
Mediterranean, quite
yeah, right.
frankly.
Yeah.
you know, but I think in doing genealogies, that's where it gets really interesting because they're not just paper and records of here and there. They're people, they had lives. And if I could go back to the book my grandfather carried with him, the book of love poems that got burned, the story was in Canada when Mussolini declared war and joined the Germans. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, within an hour, were banging on doors of Italians. And
Yeah.
my grandfather, with his one arm, took the book and he went to a wood burning stove and he threw it in the stove and he closed it
Oh,
because they were looking for things that would make you suspicious or that you were too connected
yeah.
to Italy. And so when they left, he pulled the book out, and that's why it got burned.
Hmm.
And so it's a history. Again, I didn't know what Canada did with the Italians, and it was kind of a dark time for Italians in in Canada. And so I never would have known that had I not started doing this research and finding out about these people.
Well, and we just, I don't know if you've been watching it, the Stanley Tucci show. Um,
No, I haven't
it's,
seen it yet.
oh, it's fantastic. He's
Okay.
done, oh, you have to watch. He's in the second season now. He's going through Italy and doing a tour of each region and the food and everything.
Oh,
But the last one, he was in London, and I had no idea. He said there's 500,000 Italians in London now. I had no idea there
yeah.
was that many. Um, and they did the same. They did the same thing over there.
Yep.
There were streets that and he showed the videos of them taking the Italian names off
Yep.
and all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And we know here in America what happened. My
Yes.
grandparents had the card. I have their cards
Yeah,
with
I
their
do
photo
too.
on it.
Yep.
And it's quite shocking. And again, like I said, four of my uncles, served in the military.
Yep.
And but yeah, I didn't know about Canada, and I just learned about England. I didn't
Yep.
realize that they were all doing the same thing.
And in Britain, they were nicknamed the Britallions.
Oh,
And
really?
that was disparaging, that they were called that. That was not good. So
Yeah.
yeah, these countries dealt with Italians wartime. And again, that's part of who we are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
going back to the DNA, the ancient Romans always had busts and death masks of their ancestors. So when you went into their atrium or their house, you'd walk through a row of their ancestors. And I kept thinking about that, and I thought, wow, modern day death masks and statues for us is Ancestry.com. That's our modern day equivalent. We can't take their busts, but somehow we live with an awareness of these people. And they're encoded in us. Their joys, their sorrows, what they did. I mean, I think about that a lot. In fact, as an artist, I feel that my work has been guided by them. I absolutely feel that.
No, I would think so. And it's funny. I just started up a little thing. We're kind of trying it out with doing research in Italy. I have a friend who moved there. She moved there permanently. My fifth grade girlfriend from grammar school, and so we're going to start doing some research and stuff. But she has a friend who's a graphologist.
Oh.
Now, some people say it's a pseudoscience, some say it's nonsense. I kind of fascinated by it, but I sent her my third great grandfather's signature, Count Giacomo.
Yeah.
And she did a personality trait on him, which of course I didn't know him, so I couldn't opine on whether it was right or wrong. But then I sent her the little card that my grandmother had sent to my cousin, and has her signature on it. And I would have to say she was like 90% spot on with what my grandmother's personality was.
Really?
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Interesting, yes.
So like I've been trying to tell people that whether you believe it or not, and the funny thing in Europe, they're big on that kind of stuff. They're big on graphology in Europe. Here, not so much. But I said it is interesting. It is an interesting kind of thing to send somebody a signature or a letter that they wrote.
Yep.
And have somebody come back and say this is what they were like. So, but I'm lucky in that on some sides of the family, at least my father's family, they were all literate.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandfather on my paternal side, he was an attorney.
Oh my gosh!
And his father before him was a pharmacist.
Educated.
No, they were educated. So we have signatures. My mother's family, my grandmother's got an X.
Yep, a lot of them did that. Yep.
And on her alien card, there's the X, and my mother's sister signed for her.
Huh.
Because my mother's sister by that time was probably she was probably late 20s, early 30s or something like that.
It's interesting on the literacy. I don't know why my grandfather was literate, that he had books of poetry, which is so out of character for the region when you think about it.
Yeah, no, very, yeah.
And then my cousin found letters from him to his oldest daughter, my Aunt Teresina, a tortilli recipe. And he wrote it out. And so and his writing was beautiful. And the script was just gorgeous. But my grandmother did the X.
Yeah. When I look back at the records, I'm going, I go through the pages to get to one of my ancestors, and everybody's writing real nice. And then when I get to one of my grandparents or great grandparents, the guy writes like me, and I can't read it.
Well, yeah.
It's really hit or miss with those things. You get some people beautiful, beautiful penmanship,
Yep.
and then you get the scribble. So I asked before, and we kind of went into DNA. What did you find, like anything really, really exciting that you didn't know when you were going back in time?
I just think that their stories, it was their stories on a personal level. Like, for example, when my grandmother, Gaetana Moro Benincasa, was back in Italy, their firstborn, Bruno, she had him when her husband was in Canada. And I found on the record, it said, birth of baby boy, witnessed by so and so because the father is at work.
Mm.
And then 6 years later, the little boy died. Little Bruno died. And again, the death certificate said that her husband was in Canada. So I thought about it. This woman gives birth for the first time, her husband's far away, and then to bury a son by yourself, I mean, with the other
Yeah,
children.
yeah,
I mean, that was really poignant to me, that so much happened. So when I wondered, when she left Italy, did she feel like she was leaving little Bruno behind? And how many women did that they had to say, I'm sorry, I love you from my mother son heart, I have to leave you here, but I love you and I need to go. So it was those kinds of discoveries, these little stories I found when I was researching people, that wow, it just seemed to color them in. So when I did the genealogy, Bob, okay, I'm an artist, so I prefer paint to words, okay, quite frankly, because words, you got, they have their own thing, but paint, you can do anything. So I ended up painting their paintings. I painted my grandfather and I painted my grandmother, and for the paintings I used their records, immigration records, birth certificates, as the background, and I painted their
oh,
paintings
nice.
on top of it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then I took objects from their life and put it and built it into the paintings. So my grandfather with his pocket watch, his military records are framed in the painting. And then I have a lood hanging down, Lood. I found in the records he was a loody man. Now, what the hell's a loody man? So here's this. A lood is like a carpenter's plumb bob
Oh, right.
that you hang,
Yeah.
but a lood, a nautical lood, is used since he was working on the canals. When they had to go through the bridges, they would stand at the highest point on the deck and drop the lood down to see if they'd clear the bridge.
Oh, right.
So he was a loody man, but I couldn't tell if he did that after he lost his arm and if they hired him to do that. So I put a nautical lood in the painting. And then for my grandmother's painting, I put all of her records, but she, like many Italian women, they did that beautiful crochet.
Yeah, yeah. My grandmother used to do it. Yeah.
Okay, my cousin Helen Selfie Gorde gave me she mailed to me from Canada her crocheted pieces. I put them in the painting. And I put her black rosary beads
Hmm.
in the painting. So she's sitting there holding her rosary, and her crochet work is right there with her. And how can you make a flat painting of dimensional people? They were real, Bob. So I thought, if they're real, I got to put real things in the painting. So
That's
that's how.
cool. Yeah.
So that's what happens when an artist does genealogy.
That's really a cool idea, and Andy Warholish probably. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's really a neat kind of way of doing it and looking at it. That's the thing too, if you find something, um, even certain records that are outside of just the normal birth and death type of things.
Yes.
I was, with the help of Family Search, I was able to, well, they came across the will of my, let's see, fifth, I think he was my fifth great granduncle. But he left everything to my fourth great grandmother
Okay.
because all the men were dead.
Ah,
He
okay.
was the last one left. He had no children. His two brothers died before him,
Oh,
and he said in this will that he did not want to leave anything to anybody who was not named Deriso.
okay.
So he had to leave it to the girl.
Yep. Well,
And
yeah,
yeah, which is
that was a big deal.
that was a very, very big deal. And within this part of this whole thing was not just the will, but also what it showed was how he thought.
Yes.
Right, that was one
Yes.
part of it. The other part of it was he left money to the church um, in perpetuity. That
Really?
so much he wanted so much money to go to this church forever.
Huh.
So little things like that. And
Yep.
eventually, what happened was someone along the line, and I forget exactly who, had a male heir, and this male heir uh, fought the will.
I was gonna say contested it.
Yeah, he tried to get the money back, which wound up getting all lost after Napoleon attacked Italy, and
Yep.
you know, this at least this family lost everything. But like I said, you get an insight into how this man thought
Yes.
in 1630 or whatever it was, 1670, whatever it
Yeah.
was. I mean, I I have I have a few things. A few different Facebook groups that I have, and I belong to a lot of ones. But one of them uh, is they do noble family type of things, and
Mm.
they had this party. I think it was in Florence. I think they have it every year where they dress like the people from the
Oh, cool.
1700s. And I said, I'd give anything to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And the costumes are just outrageous,
Well,
and
yeah.
they have it at a big castle and all of that kind of stuff,
Oh,
and I even my wife says it. Wouldn't it be great to maybe not go back and live in that time, but to be able to look down on how these people are
yes.
living? Yeah.
I've often wondered that. Sometimes when I go to bed at night, I talk to my ancestors. Sometimes I say, let me see where you lived. Even if I don't
Yeah.
remember it in the morning, take me there. I want to see what you guys did. How did you think? What were you doing? What was your
Yeah.
life like?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know, my great grandfather, the one who took care of my uncle, he owned a cow or two,
Oh,
and he was the village milkman. He would, and we have my cousin was smart enough to interview my uncle in Barres before he passed away. And, my uncle says he used to walk through the town with his grandfather,
hmm.
and they would stop at the house, and he'd milk the cow, and he was the village milkman.
Well, there you have it. My dad used to talk about being on a little donkey, and his mother would take him to the countryside, which is really what Mangone was, very country, to pick up wood,
Mm,
twigs for fire. He actually remembers sitting on a donkey doing that,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? I mean, we're so close in terms of age to that connection. We're not that far removed, Bob.
no, 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 we're not. And I felt the same way you did. We only made one trip to Italy. We're going next Wednesday. Finally,
Wonderful.
it's 2 years. We had to cancel it twice because
Yeah.
of COVID.
Yep.
Um, but I remember we were in we were in Sorrento, and I don't know if it was. I think it was there. We were going to um, I guess an outdoor market or something like that. And we
Hmm.
were walking through this street, and I looked in, and here was this woman. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was a big woman. And I look in, and here's this woman with the white hair, big woman, and the whole yard is filled with tomatoes.
Oh, yes.
And she's sitting there with a big smile on her face, peeling tomatoes. I said to her, I said that could be my grandmother. That could have been my grandmother, my great grandmother, sitting there.
Yeah.
And these are the things. I don't know if everybody gets it, especially the younger people. Uh, their life was so simple, but yet so full. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes, I do. I do. And then growing up in the 50s in an Italian American household,
Yeah.
I think oh my god, it was like understood that day or night anybody could come to the house.
Yeah.
Just day or night, okay? And then not only could they come day or night, and they did late at night, the table was covered. I mean, covered in food. And I always thought that was like normal. That's what people did. But that was a way, the cousins did the birthdays, we hung out together, we were in school together. And if I could, Bob, I did write their stories. There's one little passage about that I'd just like to share with you if I could.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
here we go. It was doorbell opera at its finest. Choreographed personalities speaking in animated dialect or rapid fire broken English. Heads would nod and faces contort to a chorus of laughter or gasps of shocked dismay. As a little kid, I thought those moments were no big deal because they would last forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
That
was
says
it.
it. Yeah. No,
The
that's
doorbell operas.
perfect.
Morning, noon, or night. When that doorbell rang, it was like the curtains opened and there it was. And I really did think it was going to last forever.
Yeah, I think about, and I wrote a little thing about my, being in my grandmother's kitchen. It was actually, my grandmother lived with my aunt and uncle. Um, but, sometimes I'll be frying like eggplant or something like that.
Yeah.
Now we have the air conditioner going and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Well, they would not sit, stand there for hours frying eggplant and
Yeah.
meatballs in the heat,
Yeah.
summertime, 90 degrees outside. And like it was, and the food that will come out of this four burner
Oh,
kitchen for
yes.
50, 60, 70 people.
Yes.
I look back and I say, how did they do this?
Yes. Yes. And I think you said it earlier, the younger generations, our children and their children, I don't think that moment can ever be recaptured of the way
No.
we grew up. And to me, as I get older, it gets more and more precious.
Yeah, and we're trying. I'm working with a couple of people. One of them is uh, he's he's an actor, and another guy to try and come up with maybe a 25 or 30-minute movie
Mm.
um, to connect people back. So, you know, interview people from Corona, where I grew up,
Yep.
people from Boston's North End, uh, Chicago, uh, and tie that back to Italy so that the kids could understand. And
Yes.
one of the things that they said, the younger kids, if you brought them to Italy and brought them to a cemetery or something, they'd be shaking their heads like, "Why am I here?" But
Yeah.
somebody made up, came up with a good point and said, bring them to a discotheque, bring them to a club where they'll meet Italians of their age,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so that they could connect with them, and then start to understand the
Yeah.
difference,
Yeah.
and why we need to be tied back to them. Because, one thing that scares me and some of the other people is we're going to lose all of that very soon. If some of us don't do something
Yep.
about it, we're
Yep.
going to lose it all.
In a way, I feel that as an artist, I was compelled to paint their stories for that reason.
Hmm.
And I wrote their stories out, the discoveries I made, because somewhere in the universe, I want it there. And I shared it with the family and I shared it with all the relatives. It has to be documented. Their lives mattered. They,
Yeah.
they,
Yes. Yeah.
their lives mattered. And not just to us. It's, when I think about it, what I realized, the discoveries, if you ask me, like, what did I discover in that genealogy? I am the daughter of immigrants, and I did this painting um, I did the paintings of these two people, these Southern Italian people, for a reason. And that reason is identity. I know who I am and I know what I'm from.
Hmm.
Not a lot of
Yeah.
people can say that. And we who have that Italian, Italy's encoded in us. Right, we're Italian American, so we're living in some kind of fictional idea of what the relatives
Yeah.
presented
Right.
to us. That's the Italy we inhabit until we
Yep.
go there. But we are still encoded with that country. We're imprinted with it. That will never change. So you're
Yeah.
right. Getting those stories out. I was cleaning my house. I found uh, a, a, a someone took a V8, that old fashioned camera work, and they put it on a CD and they sent it to me. It was my family from 1957 to 1964, all the relatives, birthday parties, weddings, hanging out. So I took it because I'm an artist. I do digital work. I cleaned it up, audio, and I posted it for my relatives. I sent it to everybody. And oh my God, I was getting phone calls with tears. Patty, I can't believe it. It's like we're there again. I showed it to my kids so they knew what it was like to grow up this way. Um,
Yeah. I have some of that too. My father was a photographer for the New York Daily News for
Whoa,
40 years.
really?
Yeah. From like 1946 through 1982 or 3 or something like that. But in that space for a couple of years, he did newsreels for WPIX.
Oh,
And I have 16 millimeter film and some 8 millimeter. But when
wow.
they went to Canada, for example, to see my uncle, they have I'll send it to you. It's probably about 8 or 9 minutes. They did a fake shotgun wedding in Canada,
Yeah?
where my cousin, one of my older cousins, was the bride, and and they used the scarecrow as the groom.
Oh
You'll
no.
love it.
Oh, send it to me.
And there's another one that was my mother's favorite. She would laugh. Just think, she didn't even have to see it. You just talk about it. They were in Canada, and my uncle Giovanni, is at a pump, and he's pumping water. And
Yeah.
as he's pumping the water, it's flooding the ground, and you can see his pants starting to get wet and wet and wet. And like I said, their lives were simple, but they
Yeah.
had so much fun.
Yeah.
You know. My grandmother, when my uncle came, um, he had never met his brothers or sisters, and I hadn't seen
Whoa.
his parents for 35 years.
Wow.
So
Whoa.
crazy, right?
It is. But you bring up a good point, Bob. I think for those of us around the same age, I'm not going to date myself here, but those of us around the same age, I would urge people to write your stories and make sure
Yeah,
your kids have it. And if you have photographs and you know who's who on the back, for God's sake, write it. But now is the time to make sure we share this. It's never too late. We have to share how we were
yeah,
raised, what it meant, so that whether those kids get it or not, when they get older, they're going to want this.
right. And that's why we're trying to put together that little short documentary.
Yes,
To capture some of that kind of stuff, and we're trying to to do something a little unique. But when we get a little bit further down, I'll let you know what's going on, because as
I
an
would love to.
artist, you might be interested in seeing that and
I
taking
would.
part of it. Michael keeps telling me I need to write a script. I said, Michael, I'm not a script writer.
Well, or
But he did a great. He did his. It's Michael Cavalieri, and he did a thing. Going back to his town, Limina in Sicily, and so we're trying. We'll see where it goes. But
you'll figure it out.
yeah, that's what he said. Don't
Yeah,
worry. He
yeah.
said the main thing. He says you need to capture your passion. He said the other stuff's easy. He says you don't have to be a script writer. I
No,
need to capture your passion. So
passion first, everything follows. That's
yeah.
at least as an artist, I can say that honestly.
Yeah, well, that's what he's telling me. That's what he's trying to. And the funny thing about him, we met through somebody, the person who's doing my tour, Letizia Sinisi, who did my tour, and I had seen Michael before, and I tried to contact him, and nothing happened. And then she mentioned him.
Okay.
So I said, I've been trying to reach you. And you didn't answer. He gave me his phone number.
Okay.
Anyway, I grew up in College Point in Queens, New York. He grew up, he's younger than me. He's, I guess, 20 years difference or something like that. He grew up in Whitestone, the next town over.
Okay. Boy.
And I was born in Whitestone. So I said to him, I said, Michael, do you know this? Yeah, oh yeah, I know this. Oh, you know, and so it was, I don't believe in accidents.
Oh, I don't either. No, we're meant to intersect.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I would agree with that.
So it was really great. I said, do you know the butcher shop? Yes, I used to go there with my father. And I said, I used to go there with my father.
Oh my God.
Well, listen, Pat, this has been fun. Really, really great fun. I enjoyed this immensely.
I did too. Thank you so much, Bob. This was wonderful.
Oh, thanks. And if you have if you have a website or anything, or with things with your art, just send me that so I'll include it all in the post and everything.
Would you?
Like
I'll
that.
send it to you because I have a section called My Calabria with the paintings and their stories. So I would love to send that to you.
Oh no, that'd be great, and I'll put it all in the blog so everybody else could see it.
Okay, and first of all, bon viaggio. Have a great trip.
Thanks a lot.
That's going to be fantastic. Enjoy.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.